All right, game number 3 of today's live stream. I'm covering the games of the 45-45 league on niclas.huschenbeth, and we are going to see the game Stali against Dared. Sorry if I mispronounced that. And let's just go ahead and get into the game. I'm thinking this is board number 2 or 3 of game of the season. On board 2 or 3, you guys can correct me in the chat and let me know which board it is. I'm sorry, got a little bit mixed up, so I'm not quite sure which one it is, but either one. And we see the Benoni, and here we go. Bishop d6. This can be played, what is it called? The snake Benoni? I think so, but it's, I would say you should reconsider this in your future games if you really want to play this line, because I think it just promises quite a big advantage, and you're fighting against, you're fighting for in the middle game to get back to equality. So I think you should go for the main Benoni here for d6. Bishop d6, knight c3, castle, bishop g5, rook e8, e3, bishop c7. Here bishop d3. But now you could really punish your opponent's opening play Stali by going d6, because the pawn on d6 is just really strong. So it's tough for black to get rid of this pawn. Bishop to d3 or bishop c4, both moves have been played. Bishop c4 a little bit more often. I don't think it matters that much really. This is what has been seen in a few games in my database, but white is doing so well here. This pawn on d6 really hinders black's development, so I think this is a tough spot to be in as black, and I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend this variation. With bishop d3, you're allowing your opponent to play d6 and keep a fairly solid position, even though this bishop on c7, I mean, to my eye, it just looks misplaced. Castle, bishop to g4, and here knight e4. It's funny, in this live stream, we've already seen now the third game where bishop is appearing on g4, and every time I'm saying, play h3. Why not play h3 first of all? And then later on you can still see what you're doing next. Here actually there's an immediate benefit, because of bishop h5, it turns out bishop b5 is super unpleasant for black because of the threat to the rook. If knight b7, there's bishop takes f7 and this guy's pinned. The queen has to defend the knight, so black will need to take back the pawn. That would be very, very sad. So what can black do here? If he goes rook to f8, there's knight e4, and now it's also getting sad. Once again, white is able to damage the pawn structure in front of the black king. So this is the point of h3, and if black takes on f3, then, well, we're very happy, right? We take back the queen. We also can play bishop b5 here. It's getting quite unpleasant for black already. So that's what I like to say. Just throw in h3 and just see what happens. Where will the bishop go? On which diagonal will it stay? Knight to e4, knight b7, knight takes, knight takes. Okay, so with these moves, you just helped black pretty much, right? Because the general problem for black in the Benoni is he has less space for his pieces, and the pieces are kind of in each other's way. So black likes to exchange a pair of minor pieces, and now you just did for him, right? You just spent 2 moves to trade the knight on f6, so you were just helping black in this case. Okay, let's see how this continues. Again, you could play h3 here. I would probably do that. Another option is to go rook c1. Sometimes you have to move b4 as a possibility, with some threats along the c-file. Yeah, now let's say h6, bishop h4. Okay. Black can go g5, of course. But yeah, there's some options here with b4. It's quite a complex position. Knight takes d4, knight takes d5, just bishop b5, of course. So I think this is giving white a little bit of something, but it's not that clear. At this point, you don't really have that much of an advantage anymore. Queen c2, h6. Yeah, I did not like where this went here, giving up the bishop in this fashion. So this is why I was looking for some alternatives. This is, of course, possible, but I'm a big fan of bishops, and I like to keep them in general. So wasn't too happy how this went here. Also, queen seems very well placed on f6. a6, a4, queen to g5, bishop to e4. Just a little trick here in these kind of positions. You can first throw in a check and then bring the king, bishop to e4. Just a tiny thing, but it can make a difference later on. The pawn f7 is undefended. King is just a little bit worse placed on h8 than on g8. Okay, just something to point out. Bishop to e4, b5, knight to f3. Yeah, knight f3 is possible. Seems a little bit better was something like rook a2 to prepare taking on b5 and then to double and take control of the a file and seek some counterplay this way. Interesting move here to play. Knight f3, queen to e7, bishop to d3, okay, takes, c4, and again, throw in this check and then go to f5. Or you could go to f5 immediately. I don't think it matters that much, but why not throw in a check? And here the thing is that what you want is your bishop ending up on g2. Then you can play f4 too. And why is that nice? Because your bishop is defending your king, it's defending the pawn on d5. It's not hanging out somewhere in the middle of the board, being loose, it's defended. So that would be a perfect spot. You play bishop to e4, and now the bishop is just, you know, it's just here, and it's a little bit unsafe. Here, actually, black could have punished this by going g6. Now already, there's the threat to win the bishop with f5. The move you would like to play is f4, but obviously you cannot because this bishop would be hanging. So this is why you had to do it the other way around, take a longer route. Because here you would need to play something like queen c3 to go back, but the bishop just doesn't get to the best square here. I mean, the attack along this diagonal is not that strong. Black can probably go rook a b8, and it seems black is enjoying himself a bit more here than white. Okay, black missed this opportunity, played bishop to a5, king h1, king h8, rook g1. Nice counterplay here along the g file. I like this. And now the pressure is actually becoming stronger, and black is making a mistake. Goes b4. That's too slow. c3 was necessary right away to open up some files, get some counterplay. Because the white attack is pretty serious. Here white could also go rook ag1, queen f6, takes. But it seems that here with the counterplay, black should be all right. Even though you don't want to mess with these opposite color bishops, it gets pretty tricky sometimes because, well, these two guys, they're just attacking on light squares and black cannot oppose them with his dark square bishop, obviously. So it is something to consider, certainly, but it seems the position is defendable here for black. So b4 was played, rook ag1, and yeah, now this would be too late, just to show some sample lines, right? If queen f6, again rook g7, takes, and white would be in time here. Queen d2, c3, let's say, takes, queen d4 check, and the attack becomes too strong. King g8, just bishop c2, and white is ready to bring the queen in different ways, and black doesn't have enough counterplay. So this is actually lost for black. I think the computer says rook g8, but just to give up this pawn c4, not a thing a human would really do anyway. I mean, yeah, this also doesn't look very promising, obviously. g5. Now queen d2 was played. Bishop f5 seems to have been a better option to first ask this guy where it's going. Rook c7, and now to go f4. And one common idea here, after playing f4, obviously black can never take on f4 because of rook g7 and checkmate. One idea is to bring the queen into attack now of queen d1. And the queen appearing now on h5 means trouble for black. This position will not be defendable. Also, if we consider that these two pieces are on the queen side and not helping in the defense. For example, queen f6, queen h5, threatening take on g5, for example. And if black takes on f5, it is over very soon with rook takes g5 or rook h3 coming. Yeah, nothing to do. So bishop f5, just to ask this guy, it's similar to what we had earlier with the h3 move, because the rook is well placed here on c8. It's defending the pawn, it's able to go back to defend. Now after rook c7, cannot come back to defense anymore. So you want to put your opponent in these unpleasant decisions. Queen d2, queen of e5, h4. Yeah, h4. Here bishop b1 was a good move. To be able to, well, play the queen to this diagonal maybe. And also, I think more importantly, to be able to play f4 and the bishop not hanging on e4. That was also an advantage of playing bishop to f5 earlier. You want to play f4, you want to open up the g file, get the rooks involved. But in order to do that, you can't have your bishop hanging on here on e4 check. So that's the key point. If here now c3, again queen d1 could be very strong. Similar idea, play f4, get the queen in, and the attack will be strong. By white will be actually too strong, even though the pawn is far advanced, but white is keeping everything together and white's attack will be irresistible. So bishop b1. Yeah, h4 I guess follows the same idea to open up the g file, but it's not as powerful and black can defend. Rook g8. Here actually rook g8 is also, this position is very difficult. I have to say this, yeah. It's very difficult. Better was c3. And now takes, and here after queen e2, black can push c2 and force a queen trade. And a queen trade really alleviates the pressure here for black. So this is what you want to do in this position. Force a queen trade of some sorts, and black is really back in the game and has good chance of holding. After rook g8, once again, bishop b1 was a good move. Again, to have these ideas queen c2 as well as f4 in some positions without the bishop hanging on e4. For example, rook ac8 now. Here black cannot play like this because f4 is possible and the bishop is not hanging on e4. And white is doing pretty well. Black would need to play rook h5 now, but then the rook is also very awkwardly placed, so this would be bad. After bishop b1, probably black should take on h4, but now queen c2. This other idea comes in handy. Threatening checkmate. f5, rook g6, and white is still attacking, still having the better chances in this position. Okay, let's see the game. Here now, black's able to take some attacking potential off the board, and actually with that, the position becomes balanced again. Rook g2, rook h2 was played now. I think this would be more sensible to play king g2 and play like this. Just small thing, but can make a difference later on to bring the king to g2. A little bit more natural. King f8. Here, probably king g2 also, just to improve the king position. Queen c2. And now c3 was played. This was a mistake. Rook c8 first to prepare things would be better. And you also have still the option to go b3 maybe, followed by c3. You just keep more flexibility in this position. b3, bishop to d8, and black is a little bit better here in the end game with the far advanced pass pawn c3. Alright, let's see what happened. Queen c2, c3, and now white also goes wrong, f4. Interesting idea to open up the position a little bit, but it also works against the white king. It also weakens the white king, so this is a problem. Best was to play b takes c3, and queen b1 now to come in via the b file. Rook to c8, queen b7. And white is having nice counterplay here. Even though this should lead to a draw, something like this. Check, rook h8, and here black can take on h8, take, play c2, threatening to queen, white has to take, and now black doesn't take back but plays rook h4 check, winning the queen back, and I would guess that this position is a draw with the opposite colored bishops, even though white is up a pawn, but opposite colored bishops, pure opposite colored bishop endgames have a pretty big drawing tendency. So this was a chance for white to equalize again. After f4, black's back in the driver's seat. Takes, queen f6, takes, f3. Yeah, okay. Queen b1 is what the computer suggests here, but I think f3 also makes sense to stabilize the bishop. But again, you want to see counterplay. That's pretty much the idea here. Queen b1. Because both kings are weak, it's really about who's more active. f3, king e7. Queen to b3. Rook g8. Yeah, king e7 was probably not the best choice. Here actually you should step back to f8. The position is just really difficult. So instead of king e7 here, it's probably better to improve the position of your bishop first. Bishop b6, take control of the g1 square. Also having some mating ideas here sometimes. Now queen g2, then king e7. Queen to g5. White should probably exchange queens. And try to somehow hold this endgame, even though will not be easy with this pawn on c3, this extra pawn for black. So good chance here for black after bishop b6. Yeah, tough position, very tough position to play. Rook g8, now white gets in and position is balanced again. Probably here queen c8 was best, bishop d8, and now bishop f5. Because white is really active. King f8 and rook h5 to defend the bishop on f5 once more. And if c2 with some threats of his own, white can just very calmly react with bishop g4, and white is okay because black cannot make use of his extra pawn since he also has to defend this guy on d8. Alright. Now queen c6, king f8, queen c8, bishop d8, but now I'm also guessing that the players were low on time here and white makes a decisive mistake, takes the pawn a6. The pawn a6 is not important in this position. What's important is piece activity and restraining black's piece by playing queen takes a6. Hell breaks loose, you could say. Position was tough to defend here. Best was bishop h7, rook g3, rook g2, forcing a trade of rooks, which helps white, because otherwise this rook g8 is a problem. The queen covers h3, by the way. Takes, queen g7, king f2, queen d4, king g2, king e7. Black can still try. But objectively, white is okay here because white has a good grip on the c2 square. So this should lead to a draw, but game still continues. Not easy. After queen takes a6, the game is immediately over because c2, nice move here, opening up now the queen, and that's it. Queen f1, bishop b6, and white lost on time, but his position is lost anyway with rook g1, among other threats, and black's not in a rush. Now suddenly the black attack on the dark squares is very strong, and white doesn't have any counterplay anymore, and because the king is so open, this just means there's no salvation here. All right, let me check the chat for any questions. And Steiner is saying, who's, I'm guessing Stally, is saying, I just couldn't find a plan here, so I just played the move. I'm not sure to which position you're referring, maybe to the end where you play queen takes a6. And yeah, I mean, like I said, it's a really tough position. Generally, these opposite colored bishop positions are just really tough to play with either color. And let's see what else you said. Okay, this board too, so I got this right. Okay, let's see if there are any questions. Didn't check too much during the game. Prasanna is asking a good question. I like this question. He's asking, I pointed out earlier that white could go bishop h7 check to just put the king in a slightly worse position. And Prasanna is asking, well, king f8, isn't the king better placed on f8 than on g8 because the king is closer to the center? Well, the king being closer to the center is important in the endgame when the queen's off the board. With the queen still on the board, you don't want to have your king closer to the center, because here on f8, just in the distant future, it could be a problem because of some check or because some back rank issues, something, right? So it's also slightly worse placed on f8 than on g8. I'll probably rather put an h8 than on f8, to be honest. But at some point, black might just play king g8 back again anyway. And Steiner is also saying, white was basically living on the increment after queen d2. And yeah, that's tough. That's very tough. Then 45 seconds was the increment per move, but that's not a lot of time.